This is the Bible of the electrogenic cell. It's not just the best book ever written on the subject, it's the only book ever written on this subject. Brought to you by supporters of Christ. I got my favorite yogurt, family, which I almost can never afford. But they was on sale, and boy, oh boy, was I happy to be in there at the right time. These normally $10, $12. Yeah, these normally $10, $12. But if you find yourself needing some yogurt, this is the best brand. This is the best brand I recommend. So we back to work. No, it got all the what you call it. Somebody says this a cup of noodles. It got all of the good, all of your bacteria. It has all your bacteria in there. Yeah, it got all your bacteria and stuff in there. But it's high quality, dairy free. Right? As much as can be expected in the yogurt. Because it's made from coconut. Yeah, it's made from coconut. So we back to work. None of this. None of that, right? It has been an entertaining week. It has been an entertaining week. You know what I'm saying? But we are back to work. Yeah. We back to work. You know what I'm saying? Please go to the Amazon and get all of those books. Chinese, French, Spanish. Go and get all 6 of them books. Right? Make sure you're in the Patreon. I'm still working on. So I finished all of the chapters of the first book in terms of making audio files. And I start working on the second one. And midway working through the second one, I got over inspired. As if that's a thing, right? Over inspired. How do you get over inspired? I got over inspired and then stopped working on audio book number 2 and then got back in my bag I got back in my bag and I wrote book number 3 and book number 4, right? So book number 3 and book number 4 go crazy. I'm talking about crazy. Like, it's so much information in these books. Like, it's crazy. But so I did book number 3, book number 4. What else have we done? We have, shout out to my partners, shout out to Chase and the gang, right? Shout out to Chase and the gang, my co-conspirators, my co-authors, right? Remember what conspiracy means. Conspiracy means to breathe together. Conspiracy, right? Conspire. That means to breathe together. But we start working on the next classes. So the next classes might actually start before we even finish week 15, right? We may start, because there are some people that already have the protein composition book, the water book. There are people that have the Black's Anatomy for children as well as the adult version. So people are wanting to, people are wanting to get started in terms of, Black's Anatomy. They ready to go. So it's So I have started working on that. Let me see what I got. Let me tell you what I got so far. Let me tell you what I'm thinking so far. I'm thinking a 52-week plan. Right? 52 weeks. Now, this is just for the layout, right? And I'm just giving folks time to see that we live. We haven't been live in a week or so. So people are not expecting, how social media, short attention span. You know what I'm saying? But I'm thinking 52-week plan, right? I'm thinking 7 weeks, which is 21 classes, right? 21 classes for protein composition. And then I'm thinking 20 plus, 20 plus weeks for the water book, right? I'm thinking 20 plus weeks for water and carbohydrates. The water book has a lot of carbohydrate. We touch on carbohydrates, but then another 20 plus weeks for Black's Anatomy. But kind of like, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm trying to put it together. Like, maybe it's probably going to be consecutive. It'll probably be consecutive, one then another, then another. You know what I'm saying? But me, my brain would be all over the place. So even though I have them drawn out consecutively, in real time, you'll just probably see, what I'm saying, depending on how much lives we get through, you'll probably see anywhere from 1 or 2 classes per week. You know what I'm saying? Not in total. In total, you probably see like 3 to 5 classes a week. But per, different subject matter. And so we can build up our university or our seminary school. Right? And all of the classes are going to live, like I said, in the Patreon. They're not going to necessarily live on YouTube. So YouTube would be, where the live happens. You know what I'm saying? YouTube would be where the live happens. But we're going to continue to build up the Patreon. Yeah, we're going to continue to build up the Patreon. And so, by next summer, we'll have a complete, you know what I'm saying? We'll have a complete, like, you know what I'm saying? So we can sit back and go, yeah, we put a university together. You know what I'm saying? We have college level, week by week by week. We got the textbooks. We got the, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got the whole program kind of like laid out. And then we can start to build on our thing as it goes. Hey, it's not as bad as it seems, I-10. It's not as bad as it seems. It's just we are severely undereducated. We are severely undereducated in the areas that it matters most. Let me say that. Because in reality, we're not undereducated. We're overeducated. In America, we're overeducated. We are inundated with information from all angles. It's just, the trick is that 99.9999% of the information is senseless. It's not high value information. That's where the saying, be in the world, but not of it comes from. Right? Because, attention is currency. Attention is currency. And so there's a lot of different, lot of shiny gizmos, vying for our attention in a variety of ways. And everybody's inundating us with information, even on things that aren't necessarily of value in our life. And a lot of times it's only when people get uber rich, or when people are, facing, some crazy jail time, or, the doctor says that, they have X amount of months or weeks left, or something like that. It's only in those handful of instances that most people are able to take account of what they've been doing, what they've been spending their time on, and what they've been spending their money on. And they have regrets. They have regrets because, they don't realize that two things can't fit in the same space. While two things can be true, two things can't occupy the same space. And so when people often look back in those scenarios at their life, the one thing that most people miss is it's not that you didn't maybe spend time more with your children, or it's not that you didn't learn this type of science or this type of spirituality, or you didn't do this or you didn't do that. The thing is, and that's how regrets come into form. You know, the form of regrets is usually, I wish I had spent more time here, or I wish I had spent more time studying this, or I wish I had worked on that. But the problem is not that. The problem is, and this is why people aren't able to fix it. The problem is, what did you actually spend your time on? Right? That's the problem. We wait till later, and then we notice certain things are underdeveloped, and we go, man, I wish I had, you know, spent more time hanging out with my children. That's not the problem. The problem is, what did you spend your time on? Right? When you were not with your kids, where were you? Were you at the bar? Were you at the club? Did you trade your parent? did you trade your parenthood for being a extended teenager? Like you was at the club, you was hanging and banging, you was what were you doing? You know what I'm saying? That becomes the thing, you know, because when you do that, then you can see, okay, this is how I may or may not have been misled and stayed in a place of being uninformed or misinformed, right? Because our body is designed to constantly absorb a wide variety of information, you know, and process that information. And we're doing that every day, all day. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're absorbing, processing, and storing information. So even a lot of times with memory, right? Even a lot of times with memory, it's poor cachet. You know, it's poor cachet because we have so much stuff that we deal with every day. You know, we don't often funnel, you know what I'm saying, and say, you know, this is senseless, this is useless. That's why we have the if P then Q book. The if P then Q book is important in the sense that, so if you don't have the if P then Q book, everybody go to Amazon, add it to your cart, check out, right? The if P then Q book. It shows you how the mind and the brain work together to process information, to store information. And a part of storing a little bit of information is actually eliminating a lot of information. Your brain has to constantly erase in order to store. Your brain has to erase in order to store. So the problem with some of us is that we don't know how to prioritize what gets erased versus what gets stored. So we may think that we have early dementia or our memory or whatever the case may be, but sometimes it just might be you have too much stuff coming in, and the stuff that's coming in, it's all coming in at the same level of urgency. And so you might have Kendrick lyrics coming into your brain at the same as you have the, you know, the space for learning how your body works. Or, you know, you might have, I don't know, Cardi B pregnancy information coming in at the same priority as, you know, your children got a homecoming coming up, or a football game, or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the night, your brain can't necessarily differentiate between those streams of information on its own. So there are, by chance, situations where the right information will get stored, but many times the right information may get clipped, or it may get partially clipped. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it's just a hodgepodge of foolishness coming in. So, you know, other people's lives, other people's information, gossip, drama, you know, all of that stuff's coming in, taking up space. So you know, you got to be able to. That's a part of the you know, in the spiritual space where, you know, the monk, the priest, the nun, you know, the holy mother, or you know, whatever the title, but men and women would go on, you know, like a Hajj, like they would go on a sojourn, they would go on a pilgrimage, they would take a time to be alone, right? And it's not necessarily about being alone from people. It's just about time to process information. And people don't really realize, but sometimes you have to not speak to people just because you have to keep your mind pure. And your mind being pure, because we got a lot of older, you know, religious texts or pseudo-religious texts that talk about the mind being pure, right? And the mind being pure, while that does mean like, you know, like no porn or not being on heroin or, you know, like just surface level ideas like that. What the mind being pure means is just unadulterated you, right? Just unadulterated you, like just nobody else's thoughts running through your mind, not the TV, not the radio, not your children, you know, not your wife, not your husband, not your mom, not your dad, like just time that it's just you, you know, good, bad, or ugly, whatever's coming through is just you. So you get to, you know, process your mind and kind of tap back in and cleanse your hard drives, right? That's always been a part of that process. So, you know, we have to do that in order to study. You know what I'm saying? In order to be successful outside of, you know, a monetary or material type of pursuit, like just to make sure that we're feeling accomplished in life, like we're going forward, but not like in a superficial sense, like just in a way that you don't turn around later and have those ideas of regret or whatever. So I think that it's not just you know, it's not just that, you know, people are haters, you know what I'm saying? It's not that just people are haters. People are passionate when it comes to, you know, that's why in certain places they don't allow you to discuss politics or religion, because politics and religion are, you know, it's just people are passionate about them. But the thing is, um, and it seems to be like a human paradox. People seem to be the least educated on the subjects that they're most passionate about. It's like our feelings somehow fill in the place where information should be. And so we don't bother to, like, yeah, we don't bother to figure out, you know, we just feel strongly and we'll act. We'll go from feeling to acting, you know what I'm saying? And thinking won't take a place. Thinking will be overlooked. We'll go from feeling to acting. So I think it's that, you know what I'm saying? And people just have to learn some stuff. You know what I'm saying? People just have to learn some stuff. Like the biggest thing, you know, with this whole Darwin thing is people not reading, you know, people not really reading. That's the biggest issue. People that don't read, you know what I'm saying? People that don't read, you know what I'm saying? Because, well, I don't know who's watching this video, so I'll save my comments in case, you know, yeah, because that saga's not over. So I don't want to help anybody. I don't want to help nobody. You know what I'm saying? I gotta let them, do their thing. I gotta let them do their thing. So, but the beauty is, people are kind of learning. People are kind of picking up some stuff. People are getting it. You know what I'm saying? People are picking up some stuff. And every so often, somebody's got to do that. Somebody's got to bring the culture forward. Right. So we're on week 9, day 2. Right. We got some midterms in the Patreon. We got some essays. Right. We got some incomplete essays. Right. So y'all talking about me, Inky, when you going live, I'm looking at y'all like, when y'all turning in midterm papers. Yo, Inky, where you been at on the lives? I'm like, yo, where y'all been at with the midterms? I should see 2, 3, 4, 500 essays in there. I should be overwhelmed. Yeah, I should have hundreds of essays in the Patreon, and I do not. We have some, but I don't see hundreds. Yeah. So where's yours? Where's yours at? Yeah, you. Where is your work at? All right, let me see what we on today. I think we on something fun today, as I was kind of looking forward to today. Right, I was kind of looking forward to today. Okay, yep. On page 298 in the book. $298 in this book. And then also we have the Inky and the Brainwave book. And we have the Lymphatic Immunity book. So what we're going to talk about today is definitely, we began, actually we've discussed it in a variety of books, but never really we never really went in depth with it. Right? We never really went in depth with it until, I believe, the Lymphatic Immunity book. I think between those two books, we kind of started going deeper in on the subject of electrostatics. Right? Electrostatics in biochemistry. Right? Electrostatics in biochemistry. Right? Incredibly important. One of my most, I enjoy electrostatics. It's wide open. It's a subject that no holistic healer has even ever dared to tackle. I don't even think Dr. Sabi or Dr. Africa have even ever said the word electrostatic one time, ever, in any video. But that being said, I am only using the term because I'm standing on the shoulders of Sabis and Africas and Beckers and Robert O. Becker really, kind of put a strong foundation down, and some other guys. So even Richard Feynman, though, and it's funny, one of the conversations I had this week about, Darwin, Richard Feynman was misused as a source. So I know that these sources that people be talking about so proudly are not real sources. Meaning they are real sources in terms of real people that have real books or articles out there, but these are not works that people are familiar with. They're just really banking on the fact that you're unfamiliar with these people. So they just throw the names around because he didn't know how to pronounce the guy's name, nor was he familiar with the guy's body of work. But Richard Feynman is he's one of those guys that, you know, that I lean on. It's just Richard Feynman. You know, I don't really mention his name as much as Robert Becker because Richard Feynman didn't really, you know, he was more like he was more in the theoretical space, you know, and even though I'm not necessarily a diehard fan of the theoretical space, I'm more like, you know, the real sciences, like, you know, stuff that, you know, you can put together physically, you know, you can explain some natural phenomena with. I do dance, you know, I do have, you know, I do move around in the theoretical science space because a lot of times that's where the world changing information is going to be. That's the land of tomorrow, you know, the theoretical science, the stuff that, you know, it's on the fringe today, you know, but tomorrow, next year, next decade, next century, this might be, you know, this might be the main. And so Richard Feynman was one of those guys with QED, quantum electrodynamics. You know, even though in his time period, people were like, why would I study this? You know, but quantum electrodynamics and just all of the ideas surrounding the concept of the body being electric, right? All of those concepts kind of come into play when you look at electrostatics. Electrostatics will give you more insight into the electrical world of the human body, right? And so in the space of melanin, or the melanin system rather, being anabolic, and in the space of, you know, burning calories and burning sugar and burning fat all being, you know, as true or as real as the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy, you know, we know that it is the world of noon, you know, back to Kemet, you know, it's the world of waves and particles, you know, it's the subatomic space, it's the quantum universe that actually is the driving factor of biology and biochemistry, right? So we just got to get more, you know, we got to get deeper into that space, right? So in your book, the morning lecture, right? The morning lecture is about visceral fat, hydration, and glycation, right? How the three of them interact. And Rich is having a conversation, and all of a sudden, so Rich says, let's define it. Let's define it. Visceral fat is not skin fat. It is central, internal, abdominal. It wraps around your organs. It strangles your flow from within. It is the tomb that still breathes. Then the student asks, but how does it block hydration? Rich answers, because water doesn't just move, it's guided by gradients. It's pulled by charge. And visceral fat holds no charge. Fat is hydrophobic. It repels water, not just physically, but electrically. When visceral fat accumulates, it compresses capillaries, lymph nodes, and fascia. The interstitial matrix becomes rigid. Water can't distribute. Oxygen can't diffuse. So the signal the body sends is thirst. But that thirst is confused. It arrives postponed, dulled, dysregulated. Another student says, so even when you drink water, it doesn't reach the tissues. Exactly. Water becomes trapped in the plasma, not conducted into the cells. Why? Because electrostatic architecture has collapsed, right? So that's where I wanted to come right in. We want to zoom the lens for today's conversation into the universe of electrostatics. So that way, as we're going through the material and you see electrostatic architecture, it doesn't just sound like the Charlie Brown teacher. Boom, bam, boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, bam. Boom, bam, boom, bam, bam, boom, bam. Dehydration. Boom, bam, boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, bam. Drink some water. Boom, bam, boom, bam, bam. Right? Man, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. God was working on me from a little, yeah, God was working on me from the jump. You know what I'm saying? God was working on me from the jump. I have a very, very, very unique collection of experiences that don't exist. You know, I'm a one of one for sure. That's one thing I do know. You know what I'm saying? Like I have a very unique collection of experiences. All right, so let's dig in. Hold on, I got all these books open. I got all these books open. Yo, that's another thing. Stay focused, champ. All right, stay focused, champ. All right, let me see where we at. All right, so let's go to the Google demons. Let's go to the Google demons. Let's see what the Google demons got for us. Yo, I can't hold you. I want to knock this yogurt off so bad, but yeah, it's a lot in here, man. I want to knock this yogurt down so bad. And then I done already loaded it up. Look in there. Yogurt ain't supposed to look like that. It's supposed to be like a white, creamy kind of color. You know, I done added all kind of powders and I done put the blue magic in there and all kind of everything is in this yogurt. Yeah, I put the blue magic everywhere. Yeah, people when we asking me, how do I eat the blue magic? And I'm like, you asking me? Like I'm probably the worst person. They like, well, who else supposed to have? I'm like, I put it everywhere. It goes everywhere. It goes everywhere. All right, hold up. Let's hit the Google demons. All right. Shout out to Latina, keeping us in the airwaves. I love it. All right, let's go. Let's warm it up. Let's warm it up. Let's see what Wiki got. Wiki, we still love you now. Everybody done switched over to AI, but you know we still love you, Wiki. So don't you feel lonely. I think Wiki been getting lonely. Yo, there's so many different AI programs out there. I don't even know all the names of them stuff. I know what the Google AI come up right there. You know what I'm saying? I know about the Chat GPT. HJ done told me about Grok. You know what I'm saying? So I'm aware, but there's so many of them out there. I think folks done forgot about good old Wiki. You know what I'm saying? So Wiki, we still got love for you, Wiki. Anyway. Electrostatics is a branch of physics that studies slow-moving or stationary electric charges on macroscopic objects where quantum effects can be neglected. Wow, that was a sentence. Let's keep going. Under these circumstances, the electric field, electric potential, and the charge density are related without complications from magnetic effects. Since classical antiquity, it has been known that some material, such as amber, that's where I got my daughter's name, and then, you know, Amber's situation started all this, but so that's anyway. It has been known that some materials, such as amber, attract lightweight particles after rubbing. The Greek word electron, meaning amber, was thus the root of the word electricity. Electrostatic phenomena arise from the forces that electric charges exert on each other. Such forces are described by Coulomb's law. There are many examples of electrostatic phenomena, from those as simple as the attraction of plastic wrap to one's hand after it is removed from a package, to the apparently spontaneous explosion of grain silos, the damage of electronic components during manufacturing, photocopying, laser printing, and we're going to just put a blah, blah, blah. All right, we're going to put a blah, blah, blah. Coulomb's law states the magnitude of the electrostatic force of attraction or repulsion between 2 points charges is directly proportional to the product of the magnitudes of charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Okay, so even though this sounds super sciencey, like boom, bam, boom, bam, bam, like we starting to get into the Charlie Brown's teacher space, this isn't saying anything complicated at all, right? This could be very easily simplified down to the attraction or the repulsion between two charge points, right, or two sources of charge is related to how strong the charge is, right, both of them, and how far they are apart from each other. Now, Coulomb's law is just basically putting that into a written format, but we learned that, right? We learned that as kids with magnets, right? We learned that as kids with magnets. We know that the attraction or repulsion of the two sides is going to be based on A, how strong the magnets are, and B, how close they get, because there's a distance when we playing with the magnets where it seemed like they're not even really affecting each other. Then you put them a little closer and you could feel something. You can feel something. And then you go a little bit closer and the magnets either jump together or they, push each other apart. You know what I'm saying? So that's all it's saying. It's saying that the two things that are the primary drivers between, electrostatic force is how strong the charges are and how close the charges are to each other, right? So why is this important? Well, remember, your two largest sources, right? Well, actually, we can include water too. So we go all three of your major sources of energy production in your body. You're dealing with charged particles on one level, right? Quantum level. Then you come up one space, right? And then you're dealing with ions, and the ions have a charge, right? So you got negative ions, positive ions, right? They all charged, right? And so all of these things are in each other's personal space. All of these different, charged particles are in each other's personal space. That's the beauty of the process of water being able to organize itself into negative charges and positive charges. And then those negative charges and positive charges being able to fill a space and start movement, right? They're able to fill a space and then organize themselves into motion, right? And that motion then drives all of the functions, the movement, the electric, this, that, magnetism, hormone, cytokine, neurotrans, every other thing is built on top of this. This is why I keep trying to explain the body is a system of binary, it's a binary, it's a system of binary systems. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in your body, which makes it complicated, but it's all based on binary systems, and not just binary systems, but also the Russian doll concept, where one thing fits inside another thing, which fits inside another thing, which fits inside another thing, which fits inside another thing, right? So you can look at the human body as a whole, but then you can go inside the human body and you got organs and glands, and then you go inside organs and glands and you have cells, and then you can go inside of cells and then you have, organelles. And then you can go inside of organelles. You see what I'm saying? Like it's a thing inside a thing, inside a thing, inside a thing, inside a thing, right? And because you have a thing inside a thing, inside a thing, inside a thing, you have a whole bunch of spaces, right? And all of those spaces are filled, right? All those spaces are filled with water, but different types of water, different types of water. And what makes the water types different is, like electronics, what I'm saying? Different types of electronics, they need different amount of electricity to function, right? So like, like with Apple products, some of us is on Apple products, what I'm saying? Some of us have lost phones back in the days. They're getting better now, right? Apple's getting better now. They're getting a little less petty now, right? But back in the days, I want to say anything before an iPhone 11. I think iPhone 11 is where it really changed. I know I'm talking to only half the people, because half y'all is Android people. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? And this is all electronics. I'm just using this for an example because people will probably know what I'm saying. But anything before like an iPhone 11, if you got one of those cheap chargers, I believe it was on purpose. Apple had it set up to where if you use one of them cheap chargers, like if you do that every once in a while, you'll be good. But if you try to like not use an Apple charger and you just use one of them fake $5 joints from the gas, the $10, if you just, your battery gets swollen and boom, pretty soon you don't have no phone. and it's because you use the wrong charger. You know what I'm saying? But overall, all electronics are kind of like that. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't use, your cell phone charger to plug into your laptop. Even if you have Apple, an Apple phone charger can't go into your laptop. It's not enough. So, and with living tissue, it's a little bit, not a little bit, it's a lot more complicated than just, like an amount, right? Because with electronics, it goes like, 10 watts, 20 watts, whatever. Like it's just the amount of power. But with living tissue, is not. It's like we're built off the sun. We're built off of the sun. And so the thing with the sunlight is that the sunlight is not a real, the way we're taught about the sun is almost, most of it is gobbledygook, right? Because the sunlight, like the concept of sunlight, is not a real thing. Sunlight is not a real thing, and it's not a steady thing. And what I mean by it's not a real thing or a steady thing is, like, we think of the sunlight as like just this one type of thing. That the sun's out, we get sunlight. You know what I'm saying? But the reality is, the sunlight is composed of a bunch of different things, right? So it's not a steady one thing ever. You're never getting a steady one thing from the sun. You're never getting, it doesn't even matter if you're in the same place, right? It's going to change. The amount of UVC, UVB, UVA, violet, indigo, the whole Roy G. Biv spectrum, the amount of infrared. And then even in the infrared space, you have short infrared, near, near, far, short, near, far. Like they get, it gets crazy, right? Microwave, radio wave. Like, so there's a variety of different types of, flavors, right? The best way I try to explain what the sunlight is Kool-Aid, right? Kool-Aid. Because back in the days, we used to try to mix up, because everybody had Kool-Aid in the neighborhood. That's why when you living in a certain type of way, usually you don't know it as a child because everybody around you is in the same, you know what I'm saying? So everybody's on Kool-Aid. You know what I'm saying? So we tried to differentiate our Kool-Aid by how much sugar we put in it, or not putting sugar, using fruit, or mixing up a bunch of different types of flavors to make a unique flavor. You know what I'm saying? And so the sun is kind of like that. The sun is a bunch of different types of light at one given time. And throughout the day, right? And this is why we have the book. We have the Divine Mathematics book, right? If you don't have this book, you need to have this book, right? From page 1. Yeah, we start going crazy on page 1, right? But on page 1, yeah, I think I want to say from page 1 to page 12. That's interesting, right? From page 1 to page, no, we go from page 1 to page 6, right? From page 1 to page 6. We kind of outline a like a biological activity chart, but that chart is based on that kind of Kool-Aid mix. And it's just an average because, again, the sun gives off all different types of light, right? Now, that's not steady. That's not steady. There are certain things about it that is consistent, but it's not steady because the sun has its own cycles, 9-year cycles, 11-year cycles, and so on and so forth. Even daily the sun has a 27-day cycle, which you know from time long ago, most people associated the sun cycle with the moon cycle. So most women will think like, oh yeah, their menses, it's a set to the moon, 28-day moon. But you got to remember, the moon doesn't have its own light. The moon just reflecting the sunlight. So whatever you think is happening because of the moon, it's really happening because of reflected light from the sun, and how the moon changes. It's not like a pure mirror. You know what I'm saying? So the moon absorbs some stuff, it reflects some stuff, like it changes what it reflects back to the planet, right? So anyway, the sun has a bunch of different light that it creates at any given time. And then depending on where we are in our distance from the sun determines that interaction. So electrostatics is happening, or the concept, of attraction and repulsion between charged sources is happening on multiple levels, right? We literally have seasons, we have weather, we have an atmosphere, because depending on our distance from the sun determines how the sun's activity is affecting us, right? As a planet. And then depending on what side of the planet we are, latitude, etc., it's even further refined, further different, right? So our energy source, living life, tissue energy source is different. It's a multitude of things. So going back to what I was saying about the body, right? The body having the Russian doll concept, where something is in something else and something else and something else, like that. And then it's all filled up with water, and each space is a different type of water to facilitate the electrical activity of those tissues, right? So the water that's inside my eye is not the same as the water that surrounds my brain and my spine, right? The cerebral spinal fluid is different from vitreous fluid, right? Vitreous fluids in my eye, cerebral spinal fluids in my spine and my brain, right? Now, the water is the same. It's water, right? But what makes it different is all of the charged particles. The charged particles and how they interact, right? The charged particles and how they interact. And then you have other, and then you have other stuff sprinkled in there, different types of ions and elements sprinkled in there, floating around, right? So those mixes create a different type of electrical environment for each different tissue group. That electrical environment, and we kind of talked about this the other day on Medicine. Shout out to HJ and Tanai. We talked about this the other day on Medicine, where HJ was kind of asking me, about the cellular environment. And I was like, well, the electricity and the magnetism are the base, and then there's stuff, right? Because the electricity and or magnetism acts on the stuff. Light is produced from the activity of the stuff. So it's almost like a triangle, right? Where you have electricity and magnetism at the base. Then at the apex, you have light. And then on the inside of the triangle, you have all whatever. Whatever is in there, that's all thrown in there. Fats, proteins, vitamins, mineral elements, whatever. You throw that all in the middle. And how the electricity and the magnetism interact with all that stuff that's in the middle determines what type of light, quantity, quality, etc. You know what I'm saying? The living strength of the cell, right? So electrostatics, though, like in the more scientific use of the term, applies strictly to like me saying the earth and the sun, That was kind of like an example. You know what I'm saying? But it wouldn't be considered electrostatics at that size or scale, right? Electrostatics is more like, ions and things like that in the mini universe, right? So, but that's important because again, water is the medium. Water is the medium for the movement of all these charges and for the activity of all these charges, right? How they move and how they interact, whether they get to a receptor or not, whether a transporter has the ability to carry, whatever, right? Everybody out there getting their steps on. I got to get my steps on. I be hating when I look out the window and see people getting their steps on. Yeah, Kool-Aid chemistry, man. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing where, you know what I'm saying? Like, so even our complexions, right? Your skin color is not like a real solid thing. You know what I'm saying? Your skin color is based on a living equation. Your skin color is based on a living equation, right? So this is why if you go on vacation somewhere, right, your skin color changes. Now, your skin color changes temporarily, right? So like if you up here, Chicago, you know what I mean? You Detroit, New York, right? And you go on vacation to South Carolina, Florida, Cancun, Jamaica, LA, Texas. You go to one of these hot places and you spend a week, 2 weeks down there, you put on a tan, right? You get darker, right? When you go back home, you lose that complexion. You go back to gradually, it might take a few weeks or a few months, but you gradually go back to whatever your complexion was before you went, on your vacation, right? Because it's based on a living equation. All of those different aspects of the sunlight being absorbed in the skin, and then how your skin translates that into either nutrients or free radicals, right? And the amount of free radicals that your skin produces trying to change all of that sunlight into information, because that's the thing. It's trying to turn the light into information for your body. The process of turning that light into information creates free radicals. If it creates too much free radicals, that's going to be skin cancer and, there's a whole nother direction. But your body produces pigment to offset the amount of light you're absorbing and free radical production. So you get a higher amount of information from the light that your body is absorbing. Now, when you move to a new place and the light increases, obviously the intensity increases, so your skin has to produce more pigment. Now, the amount of pigment, the type of pigment, all of those things, genetics, right? Because all of us have a Kool-Aid in our skin, right? Because even with our skin, in the science space, right? When we have these discussions, we talk about eumelanin and pheomelanin, right? But I've been around a long time. And a lot of times it's me, the one taking the arrows in the back to upgrade the community's understanding, right? And so there's a time period where the community only thought that there was pheomelanin, eumelanin, right? I had to tell people, no, There's different types of pheomelanin, and there's different types of eumelanin, right? And then time goes by again, and now we got to upgrade we got to upgrade the understanding again. Inside our skin, it's a mix, right? So when we're having discussions, we discuss eumelanin, pheomelanin separately, but inside your skin, we all have a mixture of eumelanin and pheomelanin activity. And the darker you are, the more eumelanin activity you have as opposed to pheomelanin activity, right? But you still have pheomelanin activity, right? So, and so there's two different types, which is blended in. And then when it comes to eumelanin, there's two primary types also, which are mixed in. And so depending on your concentration of the three, or rather of the four, light interacting with your melanocytes in your cells is going to produce some whatever. So this is how, we can go to, we can go to the same place, but we won't all be the same complexion, right? Because we all have different melanocyte activity. Not only melanocyte activity, but our, melanocortins, or our hormones that stimulate, melanin stimulating hormone, melanin concentrating hormone, those all function at different levels as well. So it's levels to this thing, like Meek said, right? There's levels to this thing, like Meek said, right? But this electrostatic conversation is important, right? And we don't need to, we don't need to do, right? That we don't necessarily need, right? Let me see, Wiki. See, this why Wiki, this why folks done abandoned you, Wiki. Wiki, this why they done abandoned you. Right? Okay, hold on. Let's check out triboelectricity real quick. The triboelectric effect, also known as triboelectricity, triboelectric charging, triboelectrification, or tribocharging, describes electric charge transfer between two objects when they contact or slide against each other. Right? All right. So this is kind of in the same conversation, which is why you have the direct link. You have a direct link from electrostatics over to triboelectric effect. And if you remember, if you have the Melanin book, the Melanin book is never just right here in my bookshelf where it should be. The Melanin book is always wandering around. Here we go. And the Melanin book is a classic for a variety of reasons, but because it was the first electrician manual, right? So you have to have all of the electrician manual books. Like you cannot even survive without those books. But we grabbed a bunch of stuff from a bunch of sources on triboelectricity, right? To start creating that conversation, right? Because there really is no discussion about electricity in the body without triboelectricity, right? And it is my belief, right? It is my belief that one of the reasons why cats were sacred in Kemet is because of their ability to produce electricity. My belief, just from everything that I've studied and read, that one of the reasons why cats were sacred was because of their ability, when you're rubbing a cat, you produce electricity. So listen, sometimes the AI is not correct. Or it might be correct, but it might underemphasize something or over exaggerate something, because the AI is lifeless in a sense, you know what I'm saying? So yes, when it comes to skin cancer, right? When it comes to skin cancer, white people, right? We got to use air quotes when we say things that don't really mean anything, but euphemistically, we kind of use the term so we know, okay, white people, right? But yeah, so white people get skin cancer way more often than black people do, right? But the thing is, skin cancer is way more deadly in black people. It's way more deadly. Black people die from skin cancer more than white people do by the numbers. That's what's crazy. And the reason, the primary reason I believe is because we can't tell. We can't tell. Our body wasn't really designed for that. We're supposed to be, able to absorb, unlimited amounts of the sun, but that's just not the case anymore because we're not in the sun like that. So a part of understanding that the sun is not a steady one thing, sunlight is not a steady one thing, also means that you have to constantly be in the sun in order for your body to get better at absorbing the sun, right? So most of us live indoor lives and we go on vacation every so often and get some sun or whatever the case may be. And in those times, we want to pop out and act a fool. Or like if we live up north, Detroit, New York, whatever, 10 months out of the year, we're not getting any sun. Then we want to pop out and act a fool in the summertime. You know what I'm saying? You have to get your body used to it. It's like lifting weights. You know what I'm saying? You can't just jump under heavy weights. You got to build up to it. Start maybe just using the bar. Then you adding 10s, then you adding 25s, then you adding 35s, then you adding 45s, and then so even with the sun, no matter how dark skinned you are, you need to get your sun in increments. You need to get used to hanging out there 20, 30 minutes straight. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's 100 degrees, it don't matter, whatever the temperature is, or 80 degrees, whatever. But 20, 30 minutes, get you a little break, you know what I'm saying? Or just let your body tell you. Because usually your body will tell you. You got a lot of stuff that'll start to happen before skin cancer pops up. You know what I'm saying? So most people know when it's time to take it in, even if they ignore it, right? You go out in the sun and, all of a sudden you start getting a little, you start getting a little lightheaded, a little dizzy. Take it down. You got too much. You're going back inside the house real quick. You know what I'm saying? Or, you start getting a headache, or any of those little things like that. Take it on back in the house. You know what I'm saying? Get you some water, hydrate real quick. Maybe have you a little snack time. You know what I'm saying? And then go back outside. You know what I'm saying? Go take your butt back out there. You know what I'm saying? And then keep the process going. you'll get to a point where, 3, 4, 5 hours, 6 hours before long, you'll be able to stay out there, the whole day, unprotected. But it's not really unprotected. It's just with your body's natural protection. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of things go on in the process of converting sunlight into information. It's not just melanocytes responding by producing more pigment. It's also the whole white blood cell community. It's mitochondria got to respond, hydration, blood flow your blood has to move, it's a lot that goes on. Everything is a part of it. The kidneys, your liver, your bone marrow, everything is a part of metabolizing sunlight. There's no part of your body that's not at work. Your brain has to start pumping out, POM C and MC, every part of your body is active with absorbing sunlight, every part of your body. And so your overall health and condition is going to also play a key role in how you can absorb sunlight, right? Because it's not just the melanin system that's running, right? But think about it. Your vitamin D system is running, right? Your vitamin D system is running, which means that your liver and your kidneys are running, right? And running harder, right? Because now your liver and kidney has to convert, cholesterol to vitamin D and blah, blah, blah. So everything is running. Everything is running. Parathyroid, thyroid, everything is running to facilitate the thing that we probably take for granted because we just get the sun and then we look in the mirror like, yo, I got darker. We're not thinking about the millions of processes that has to go on to facilitate that change, right? And all of those processes, again, goes back to the basics of electricity, magnetism, nutrient density, hydration, like what's the water levels looking like, right? Because the more light you absorb, the faster things start to happen. The faster things start to happen, the more fluid you actually need to facilitate the biochemical changes that's going on faster and faster and faster. So dehydration becomes much more pronounced in the heat. So that's why, you get the basic warning, like stay hydrated. Yeah, it's going to be hot out, stay hydrated, right? Because your body's natural systems can't even work if you don't have enough hydration, right? And then that circles all the way back around to a conversation that we keep revisiting. TEWL, tool, right? Transepidermal water loss, right? What is the rate of water loss through your skin? That's determined by the quality of your skin and how well you take care of your skin, right? The better you take care of your skin, the less water loss you have through your skin, right? Some of us, our skin has holes. You have so many cracks in your skin, it amounts to holes where water is literally leaking out of your skin at a high rate. So because the water is leaking out, that increases your free radical production and lowers your redox rate. So you can't change, it puts a limit on you. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So, it's not as simple as say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Say it again. It ain't that simple. You know what I'm saying? We got to be out. We got to be out. We got to be on our biggie, Netches talking it, but ain't living it. You know what I'm saying? Netches talking it, but ain't living it. Sunlight, I'm sipping it. Hats backward. I don't know. I don't know. So we definitely have to have some patience with going out there in the sun. And they've run some studies that show that even white people, because they've run some studies in Europe, can acclimate themselves to the sun after time. So there are even white folks that can be out in the sun all day without necessarily getting skin cancer. You know what I'm saying? You got people that's in the roofing business and just all kind of different things where they just forced to be outside. Their body adjusts. They might put on suntan lotion, but that suntan lotion might work for them for like 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. They out there 7-8 hours. They don't realize it, but what's happening is over time, their body's building up its reaction speed. So it really comes down to us being out there and getting our butts out there into the sun. Wait a minute, what you say? Hold up, somebody said read Arnold Ehret. Listen, I introduced that book to everybody. Nobody even knew who Arnold Ehret was. And I told one person in Philly about Arnold Ehret. And then that person, unfortunately, said, "Oh, I'm about to debunk Dr. Sebi with this." I was like, that's not why I gave you that. That's not why I gave you that. Yes, you know exactly who I'm talking about, but we're not gonna mention his name, but you know exactly who that was. Yes, that individual. That's one of the regrets that I have. Over the years, I learned how to be more responsible with teaching because I realized that if you show somebody something, you don't know how they're going to interpret it or what their intentions will be, like what they're going to do with that. You know what I'm saying? So like back in the days, I used to do like some tantric sex, conversations. And then people weren't necessarily using that to create smarter babies. They were trying to, like get into, pimping and just crazy stuff. So I learned like, okay, yeah, you can't. Everything's not for everybody. And I learned to have a greater respect for why our ancestors created initiatory schools, why they created secret societies, right? Because they wanted to make sure there was a level of dedication and maturity and responsibility before they gave you this information. Like here, whoop, we can't stop you from misusing it, but we can try our best. So we're going to make sure that we get you to here before we give you this. We're going to get you here before we give you this. And then we're going to have you locked into the society so that if you do step out of pocket, we can tighten you up. We're going to put some love on you the old fashioned way. If you out there, we catch you out there acting a fool. You know what I'm saying? So I learned with information, like you have to have, you have to have counsel. You have to have people around to make sure you keep your feet on the ground. You said that broke your heart. Man, it broke my heart too. It broke my heart too. Yeah, that was a classic time period. And right now, times like now, I still be thinking about some of these past relationships and people, like what we could be doing. But a lot of times it don't be up to me to, you know what I'm saying, to fix some of these things. All right. Let's see if we can go a step further. Okay, let's see what the Google demons. Okay, hold on. Here go the Google demons. Right, I was hoping Wiki would have had something for us, but Wiki ain't got nothing for us. Let's see what the Google demons talking about. Right. In biochemistry, electrostatics refers to the electrical forces of attraction and repulsion between charged molecules, which are crucial for determining the structure, function, and interactions of biological macromolecules like DNA and proteins. All right. So, full stop right here for a second. Right. For some of the people, it may not have hit you, but for the people because some people are not interested in my inky escapades, debates, and some people are not interested, and I get it, it's cool. But there are some people that are in class, they just they trying to get all the information, right? So when you see terms, when you see DNA pop up, right, just to simplify, anytime you see the conversation of DNA pop up or RNA pop up, right, that's why the conversation, and you go, well, DNA and RNA, well, DNA, RNA, that's always going to pop up inside. If you're talking about health, that's going to be in everything. That's why I have what looks like unlimited amounts of patience to continue to have arguments about evolution and Charles Darwin, because it forms a large part of the basis of everything we're doing in terms of health in our lifetime and then going forward. Right. So it's a very important conversation to get and try to build some understanding around, you know what I'm saying? So I have patience to continue to, no, that's not, no, that's not, no, you got to get this, you got to, because if we can't get the foundation, we can't. Now, of course, I can't spend forever in the kindergarten because we got folks that's in elementary level of understanding, folks in middle school level of understanding, high school level, college level, beyond. And everybody needs to grow in terms of their research. So we can't really, spend our time there forever, but it's very useful to make sure that we reach back, as we build an intellectual wealth. You know what I'm saying? So to speak, it's philanthropy. We got to make sure we give back because it's an important conversation, right? It's a very important conversation. So when we look over here, and just so you can see what I typed in electrostatics and biochemistry, right? In biochemistry, electrostatics refers to the electrical forces of attraction and repulsion between charged molecules, which are crucial for determining structure, function, and interaction of macromolecules like DNA and proteins, right? So we can't have a qualified conversation about DNA or proteins without the electric part. Without the electric part, right? So we have to constantly build one thing onto another. In fact, even I guess to a greater or lesser extent, the water conversation, you know what I'm saying? Like the terms are different. That's another thing. Let's just talk about words for just a hot second, right? So we always have to remember that words don't really mean anything, like intrinsically, right? This is why people that come from another country, you saying whatever, but your words don't mean anything, because from another country, they haven't learned the system of symbol decoding, because that's what it is. A language is symbol decoding. Each letter has a set of information associated with it. You put it together, you make words, and boom, boom, boom. But outside of your language, it doesn't mean anything to somebody else, right? So we just got to realize that there's the actual phenomena, and then there's the words used to describe the actual phenomena. So sometimes you have a very similar thing, but you have a bunch of different words to describe this similar thing in a bunch of different spaces, right? So we know duality, right? We know pushing and pulling. Well, we have a bunch of different words to describe pushing and pulling. A bunch of different words to describe pushing and pulling, depending on the materials doing the pushing and pulling, depending on where they are, how big they are, scale, time, all of these different things change the words we use, but the pushing and pulling thing is consistent. That's how the universe, and that's how it goes, right? So with water, we have hydrophilic, hydrophobic, right? Hydrophilic stuff is going to pull, right? Hydrophobic stuff is going to push, right? Hydrophilic is going to pull, hydrophobic is going to push, right? Even when we're talking about alkaline or base and acid, right? That's still a push-pull relationship, right? So an acid is going to pull electrons and push protons, right? A base or alkaline is going to push electrons and it's going to pull protons, right? So that's why alkalines are called electron donators, right? Because they will push out electrons, right? And acids are considered to be proton donators because they will push out protons, right? But even in the world of science, you have slightly different ways of explaining acids and bases and blah, 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 right? But for us, that's just trying to understand the health of the body. Yes, we need to get into the technical part of some of these things, but not so far deep that we spend more time figuring out nuanced terminology than function. You know what I'm saying? We're working on that. We're working on that. That's something we're working on. We actually have books out. Let me show you. Here's one of them right here. Right? We actually have books and we have people working on getting their degrees so that we can have qualified, right? I don't want an arbitrary thing. I don't want to just be like, yo, this is my man. He been hanging out, supporting for a long time. So he's our representative, teaching whatever. Like, this can't be based on that. It can't be based on the love. It has to be based on study, You know what I'm saying? Like even this class right here we're in now, right? This is week 9, day 2, right? So people that turning in midterm, hint, hint, wink, wink, everybody should have been turning in their midterm, right? And then their final, there will be a certification for this class, right? So we want to have people representing the family out there so we can extend our reach, but we have to have qualified people that know what it is that they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? That know what it is that they're talking about, at least in specific areas, because nobody is really a genius like all over in their life. You could talk to somebody and they start talking to you about economics and you'd be like, yo, this guy's a genius. Yeah, but he may not know his way around the kitchen, or he may not know how to fix a car, or he may not know how to raise no children, or just whatever. You know what I'm saying? So we just want to get people to be, really good at one thing or a couple things and have them going out into the world and focusing on that. At the same time, we want to build tools to help people go out there and talk to people in general, right? Because everybody should be going out recruiting people in general. Like, yo, we got to learn this. But in that space, you're just inspiring people. You're just inspiring people to come get inspired. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same as necessarily you running some classes, right? But definitely, I'm with you on that. We got to build that up. Yeah, you trolling. I appreciate it though. You trolling, but I appreciate it. All right, so electrostatics. Let's dig in and see what else the Google demons have before we go to the National Institute of Medicine and see what they got. Right? We're going levels with this thing. We're going wiki. We're going Google demons. And then we're going to go National Library of Medicine, see what they're talking about. All right. All right. Charged molecules. Proteins, DNA, and other biomolecules have inherent charges due to the amino acids and nucleotides they are composed of. Okay, so what I need to do real quick. Let's do that. Okay. Let's do this real quick. So we could get some more clarity, right? And I guess we putting some respect on Sabi's name today. We putting some respect on Sabi's name today. Right? But let's look at all these things. So when we talk about electricity in the body, we get an idea, right? So here we read, right? Charged molecules, proteins, DNA, and other biomolecules, right? So let's just get a working idea of what biomolecules are, right? Well, we got protein already, right? So in that space, we might as well add to protein fats and carbs, right? Then we go nucleic acids, right? So that's what we get in our bag. And I think we can even include like ATP, GTP, obviously DNA, RNA, but all of these different things. What else can we include? Do we need to put glucose separately? I think we can leave glucose right there, right? I mean, we could just assume under carbs, right? Hormones, right? So under hormones, we got insulin, we got everybody, all the hormones, just any hormone you could think of, right? Neurotransmitter. Oh, we got enzymes. Right? We got organelles. Neurotransmitters. Right? And that about covers your whole body. Right? That about covers your whole body. Right? Besides the water, that covers everything. Right? Besides the water, that covers everything, because you don't have anything in your body that's not made out of this stuff. Right? Everything in your body somehow is a part of or made up out of some of these things right here, right? Because over here, just for correction, we're going to put aminos. Right? We're going to put aminos over there. Right? So everything, so that way it's not just protein per se, but peptides, pigments, all of those things can fall under this category. Right? So everything, all of the physical structures in your body have a charge value. Right? All of the physical structures in your body have a charge value. Paul said, I might catch some heat for asking this question. I appreciate the question, Paul. Paul, listen, you ain't going to catch no heat, brother. What we're going to do is assume that you're being a good Samaritan and you're asking me that question, not for yourself, but for the other people that might need to know. That's what we're going to assume, right? But you need the actual book for the class, right? So the class is week 9, day 2, right? Melanin is anabolic, the big fat burning lie, right? So you need the Melanin is anabolic, big fat burning lie textbook, right? And week 8 is basically middle of our semester. Week 8 is basically middle of our semester. So when you get to page 273, 273 is week 8, day 3. And that's where you get your midterm lecture to kind of let you know, but basically all of the previous weeks from orientation, week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all of those should culminate into your midterm. And the midterm assignment is on page 276, right? 276. And it has 3 specific points for you to cover with the midterm. But two of them are more important than the third, right? And so that's on page 276, because I know there's some people that have the book, but just have not been reading it. I know some of y'all have the book, but haven't been reading it. And then some of y'all have the book, but you haven't been reading it a lot. You know what I'm saying? So you might be like on page 46, page 102, page wherever you at. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the information is in terms of the midterm. You know, and then you can go to the Patreon and drop your midterm in there. You could drop your midterm in there, right? And even though the Patreon may have limits to how many words you could use, just, you know, drop it in pieces, and I'll read it. You know, read it through the Patreon or whatever the case may be. Ain't nobody said that. Ain't nobody said. Yo, Paul's scamming. See, that's why Paul, you scamming. That's why Paul said he might catch some heat for this, because he knew he was scamming. Look, this is the setup. So he asked me that question, so that way he could come with this one. So we could stop trying to read all them other books and just focus on these books, right? I'm not going to say yes to that. I'm not going to say yes to that, but actually I will say yes to that. You know what I'm saying? I will say yes to that. You know, it depends on what you got going on, what you're trying to get out of this. So definitely for the people who are trying to get like the certifications and the degrees and become ministers of the information and all that, I would definitely shorten your focus. I would definitely shorten your focus. But I'm getting ready to mess your focus up again anyway. I told you I was working. You know what I'm saying? I was working. That's why I need y'all to hit the Cash App, Super Chat, Zelle, Amazon website, something. Send me some dollars, because you know, even when y'all don't see me on the live, I'm still working. So I finished 2 more books, which is really going to be more because I got to translate them into other, you know, whatever. But then I worked on protein composition curriculum, which it looks like it's going to be 7 weeks. Water and carbohydrate curriculum, that looks like that's going to be 21 weeks. And then Black's Anatomy looks like that's going to be 21 weeks. So let's get ready to rumble. Nah, I definitely know. So that's why I love you, Paul. So yeah, I would just go one at a time, to be honest. That way you knock them out. You know what I'm saying? That way you knock them out. Because you can't do the test all at once. You know what I'm saying? So whatever you're trying to get the test in for, I would just focus on that real quick. You know, get that in my brain and then go on to the next joint. But test, you know what I'm saying? Like, soon as you finish with a book, test, hit me up like, yo, Ink, let's schedule the test. Boop. And then we do the test. And then, you know, you move on to the next joint. But always do your test while the information's fresh in your mind. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. You got folks that are excellent drivers, but if you was to pop up and give them a surprise driving test tomorrow, they might fail it, even though it's a great driver. It's just because they'd be like, man, I didn't read that book since I was 15 years old. Like, exactly. So you always want to do the test when it's fresh in your mind. So the information's there. Boop. And for the people that don't know, the test, now the test for this class, what we're doing here is no test. It's midterm and finals. But for the degrees, the test is a conversation, you know what I'm saying, between you and I. That it won't be on the video or live or whatever, but it's a private conversation. So I can ask you questions and see how well you learned the info. And, you know, make sure that you're not like I just got to make sure you have a good conversational grasp on the info. Not that you got 500 questions memorized to the right answer. That's not even possible in 2025. Nobody's doing that. Right. But just that you got a good grasp, you know what I'm saying, on the info. Right. All right. But yeah, the midterm is definitely in the book. So if you don't have the Melanin is Anabolic book, that is the class you're currently watching. So you definitely should have that book. All right. All right. And no, you can't just watch the videos, because if you're just watching the videos, you're like so right now we're talking about today's classes. Primarily, we're talking about electrostatics. This is just a small portion of what week 9, day 2 is in the book. Right. But it's something that we want to highlight and expound on and explain and answer questions on to make that chapter, or those lectures more easy. Right. So the videos are just to accompany the book. The videos just accompany the book, and we delete these videos and move them over to Patreon. So if you're going through the YouTube and you're like, yo, I can't find week 1, I can't find week 2, I can't find week 3, that's because you missed the live, and we already put those in the Patreon, right? Like this live. This live would be up for, who knows, maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, and then it'll vanish. Once it vanishes, it'll be over in the Patreon universe, where it's going to live, because our goal is to build a seminary school over there, right? Class by class, book by book. You know what I'm saying? So that's what when I say we, I mean me and you and I, right? That's what we are doing. We are building up library. Now that we got a full library, I made a comment the other day. I didn't even think about it. He said, yo, it's a lot of guys on YouTube that be making videos, and they be like having a lot of books in the background, but only Inky actually wrote all those books in his background. Yo, that's a bar right there. That was a bar right there. I had to tell my children about that. I was like, yeah, that's a good one. All right. But anyway, back to the info. Right? Back to the info. Because I want us to kind of think of this in a different way. Or at least start to open up our mind to new understanding. Right? So like even with the timeline where we talk about medical school and the development of understanding over time, and we talk about 1961 electron transport chain and blah 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 blah. We have maybe 100 years of thinking about these things, maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years of thinking about these things, but we have never, and I knew it was a part of my job, my calling in life, to address this. Because all throughout school for me, it drove me insane. I'm telling you, it drove me crazy. I could not understand for the life of me, pun intended, I could not understand for the life of me why electricity, magnetism, and light were not included. Water was not even included. I couldn't understand it. You know what I'm saying? Especially with like iron being in the bottom. Like how we left out magnetism? Now how is our body running on iron and we don't have a magnetism like? So again, the whole entire idea of anatomy has to be rebuilt. It has to be rebuilt. And this is one of the organized places that already exist where you can find a lot of studies, and it's a treasure trove of understanding the electrical activity going on in the body, right? Electrostatics. So that's why we had to have it as a part of the discussion, and open up the conversation, open up the rabbit holes, but also open up your mind, right, in terms of your new way of thinking of these things, right? Your new way of thinking of these things. Like, think of DNA, right? Think of DNA inside the cell, right? Right. Think of DNA inside the cell with like electrical, you know what I'm saying? Like electrical charges, you know what I'm saying? Like lightning, like miniature lightning flying off this onto something else. Right. And literally, as people learned more about cells, I would say like in the 50s, the 60s, even probably before that, even going back to like maybe Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, they was doing a lot of getting high. Listen, this is the other side. So you gotta get life story books to learn about this part of the scientific development, right? So for instance, you got like textbooks that would teach you science stuff, and they'd be like, oh, well, in Copenhagen, they did a series of quantum mechanical experiments, and they'll name the names that was there, and they'll talk about the discoveries and all that, right? But it's not until you get the actual personal life stories of each individual scientist and start reading those that you start to discover, oh, so this person used to like to smoke this, or this person was an alcoholic, or this person had a lot of, he had trouble with the ladies, or, just different things that was going on. And it will help you to get insight on how people came up with things that was so far outside of accepted reality, right? Which wind up changing the world later on. But people had different ways of tapping into other parts of their mind in order so that they could see realities that weren't necessarily present at the time, right? It's not just a matter of reading ancient texts or whatever the case may be. So people, it was a lot going on at these retreats. You know what I'm saying? A lot was going on at these retreats. But yeah, they were coming up with stuff there, and the only logical conclusion, and this is where you got Occam's razor or Occam's razor, whatever, right? Which says that after you go through all of the logical or kind of like societally acceptable, after you go through all of the logical ideas, whatever's left over, no matter how crazy it is or how far outside the norm it may be, whatever's left over, that's what it is. And so once science began to get to the space where they figured out, okay, we got this many cells in the body, we got billions or trillions of cells, right? And then each one of those cells has hundreds of thousands of chemical reactions happening inside it. You know what I'm saying? Like in a second, in a moment, right? And in order to have a healthy tissue, right? It doesn't matter what the tissue is, bone, organ, gland, whatever. All of the cells in that tissue have to be unified. They have to all be working together. So in order to do that, they kind of have to have a way to share information right? They got to have a way to share information so that they know what's going on with each other. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, right? And this where, they had to be, it's a lot of vodkas and tequilas, and the liquor was, I mean, man, but they had to, really project, and again, Occam's razor, a Cam's razor, they had to, if you got 100,000 reactions happening per second, right? Nothing can happen without information, right? Nothing can happen without information. In fact, the cells all need to be informed of what everybody's doing, right? So although you have like neurotransmitters and hormones, that it's not that kind of information. There had to be another way that cells share information, and that had to happen at a speed like way faster or exponentially faster than the chemical reactions, right? So the chemical reactions is happening in the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of times per second. The information got to share faster than that so that the reactions can happen accurately and timely, right? So in that space, that's when they realized that they had to get back to, they had to start going back to some ancient papyri and some ancient scrolls and some things like that, because we have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000-year-old concepts of, magnetism or light, light bodies or different layers of light emanating from the body and certain things like that, and over thousands of years, some of that stuff has been misconstrued into gobbledygook. Some of that stuff has just been, untouched. You got to blow the dust off of it. Some of it is hidden down in the Vatican safe. A lot of stuff like from the Library of Alexandria and from all of these big libraries that some history books may say, oh yeah, they set the library on fire after they took over. No, they missed the part, right? They took over, grabbed all the good stuff out of the library, and then set the library on fire. Yeah. And that stuff, a lot of that stuff is in the Vatican vault. You know what I'm saying? The most valuable thing the Vatican has in the Vatican vault is information. You know what I'm saying? And they have people that they hire to rewrite, scrolls in different languages so that they preserve, so that time doesn't catch them, and they rewrite them every so many years, and they keep them, out of the air and all kind of stuff like that. So, yeah. So once they realized that, there had to be some other means of communication that didn't require water. It just, it took us another 40 to 50 years to figure out the electron transport chain totally, which is 1961. And that's like the official beginning of the understanding, right? So from 1961, I would say the early 2000s. I would say we had an impact, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of what we were doing started to hit the colleges. Like I remember one time, one of my books had flooded the college scene because a guy had bought my books. And this when I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. So I would just send people a PDF, like the regular, I type it on my computer, send a PDF. Yeah, send me $10, $20, whatever. I send you the PDF. I'm thinking so there's one guy, he like, yo, I got the whole college campus, the teachers, professors, everybody is on your material. I was like, word, I'm checking my website. I'm like, yo, I ain't really see nothing. He like, nah, bro, I'm telling you, I got yo, everybody got that PDF. And I keep checking my website and I'm like, I ain't getting no dollars. Like, what is happening? You know what I'm saying? Brother must be lying. You know, maybe his energy good. I appreciate I appreciate what he's trying to say, whatever. But, and so he like, nah, they want you to come down here and speak because everybody got I'm like, yo, how everybody get the PDF and nobody went to the website? He said, oh, man, ain't nobody going to that website. I just sent everybody a copy of mine. This Netcher done bootleg my book thousands of times. Oh man, you know what I'm saying? So I learned, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, we're not doing that again. No more PDFs floating around. There'll be no more PDFs floating around. You know what I'm saying? But what is my email? My email is ministerinky@gmail. Only thing is, I don't really check my email because I get so much email. I can't respond to it all. So I just don't even want to tell people to give them the expectation that I would be responsible for something you send me in the email. So usually somebody got to text me and be like, yo, Doc, I just sent you an email. Go check your email. I just sent you this in your email. And then I'll go check it. Because you might be one of them scammers from Africa. Like, yo, I just sent you $150,000. All you got to do is click right here and you're going to get the $150,000 in your email right now to your bank account. And you'd be like, what? Click. It's over. They done stole your whole life and scammed you to death. But talk to me while you got me. You said, what is a good place to contact you? You contacted me right now, right this second. You and I are in contact. What you trying to send me in the email? Or what you trying to, let me know what you're trying to do. And I can tell you, walk 2 blocks straight, make a left turn right there, make a right, you right there. But right now, me and you talking, we communicating right now. And the best place to contact me is in class. Right? But you want to send me a book? You want to send me a few dollars? We got the whole program. We got the program. Oh, that ain't that private. He said a missing item in my order. Nah, that ain't that private. Text me at 586-298-5000. Sometimes I'll be sending people the whole entire. We just sent Osborne the whole wrong. Every item was wrong. So shout out to Osborne. So yeah, he wound up getting a whole bunch of extra stuff. I told him to give it to some of his family. But yeah, we try our best to eliminate mistakes, but they happen. So I'll get it together. Okay. All right. Yeah. So yeah. I remember chipping you out. I got you, Tom. I got you. Yeah. Let's get it together. We gotta get you together. You gotta get me. Especially now, I'm trying to do all these curriculums and books and the children's books got my mind in a whole universe. Because that's the thing about creating stories. You have to live, like you got to create a universe. You know what I'm saying? You got to create a universe. So we got this whole universe of King Solomon and Kemet and Rich and Pharmakia. And that's what the battle is. The battle is between Rich and King Solomon fighting against Pharmakia. You know what I'm saying? But it's really the children that's doing all of the stuff. And they're learning about, anatomy and some other more advanced concepts, and it's crazy. I told you, we trying to take out J.K. Rowling. You know what I'm saying? So I need y'all to support these children's books. Dame Dash was on the Breakfast Club talking about his books promote cognitive, bruh. Anyway, back to the information. Right. So, charge molecules, right? Charge molecules, charges repel, charges attract, right? So even in this conversation here, if you notice, is still relatively simple, right? Because it's about charges repelling and charges attracting, but they haven't got to the space where they really talk about charges informing, information sharing, right? So, you know, we can't wait. We can't wait for 100 years for, you know, what we need now in terms of our health. You know, we can't wait for 100 years in a life we won't even be there, you know, to hope that maybe our babies get what they need. We got to take control of that and teach them now. You know what I'm saying? So that's the part that you won't see, that's left out, right? Is the transfer of information in the league, in league and step with repel and attraction, right? That's how information is selective for specific body parts that needs to act together, right? So based on like charges, there's a information transfer, right, that happens. And so that information isn't transferred in the wrong space, the wrong instructions given, which would lead to the wrong chemical reactions happening, you also have repulsion, right? So you have on, you have off, you have ones, you have zeros, you have binary coding at the most basic level of how our body is designed. All right. All right. Key roles in biological processes: protein structure folding, electrostatic interactions, DNA structure, blah, blah, blah. Boom, bam, boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, bam. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let me see something. Let me see if I can find something for y'all real quick. All right, so I think we can go here and just look at fiber optics real quick. Right? If we look at fiber optics real quick, it'll give you just like a more of an open-minded sort of way to think about how electrostatics can later on grow into a better understanding of information transfer, right? Because that's how our technology works. Light and electricity transferring energy, right? Um, right. So you have two different ways, typically, right? You got fiber optics, and then you have the old school, right? You have the old school where you have copper wires, which is electricity. So the science is not necessarily new. We have been using photons to transfer information in our electronics for a very long time. We've been using electricity to transfer information in our electronics for a very long time, right? It's just the fact of, again, 1765, we developed medical schools. And, it's another 200 years before we figure out, I'm going to say 200, at least another 130, 140 years before we figure out. So you got a medical school, 1765. You don't have Maxwell doing his thing and Max Planck doing his thing until the late 1800s. So that's like 100 years later. We start to figure out light and light's relationship to electricity and magnetism, right? So that happens 100 years after we get quote unquote organized study of the human body and the human anatomy, right? And this is happening separately. So Max Planck studies are not necessarily based on the human body. Maxwell studies are not necessarily based on the human body, right? It's not for another 80 years where we start to really understand that we have magnetism, electricity in the human body. And then from that time period, it's another 60 years before we begin to admit that the human body produces light. So we have not had the time to assimilate these things and really put this together to understand. And that, to me, is the core reason why all of today's modern diseases, especially in America, center around energy metabolism. Literally, because we start studying the human body without the study of human energy. And although the human body study, we have that down packed to a fine degree, right? That's why surgeons can do some miraculous things sometime, right? But the reason why that can't happen all the time is because when it comes to the other side of the human body, which is the energy side, we have a very low level of understanding, which is the reason why the number one and number two threats are the heart and the brain, because the number one and the number two threats are the number one and number two generators of electricity, magnetism, and light in the body, right? So anyway, hopefully our electrostatics conversation is making some sense. If not, you probably ain't got the books. You probably don't have the books, buddy. So you need to get the books. Okay, so hydration right? Hydration and its relationship to electrostatic collapse. Again, water facilitates the charge movement in and around all of these things, right? And these are the small things, right? The small things create the bigger things, so the bigger things are still the same, right? The bigger things are still the same. So bone, well, actually, bone is separate, right? Bone is even crazier than all of these things combined. That's why we don't even bone is its own whole universe, right? Bone is its own whole universe because all of the rules that apply to the rest of the body also apply to the bone, but the bone is piezoelectric crystal, which adds a entirely, a whole nother dynamic onto it, right? So all of the other things apply, but then you also have the piezoelectric nature of bones that adds a whole nother layer to bones. And then because our bone marrow is the source of our blood and our immune system, that makes the fact that we overlook the importance of the bone just even crazier, right? Which is why, number one of the top reasons people die over 60 or over 70 is because they fall down, which is crazy. That's crazy. You shouldn't even be able to call yourself a modern country if people are dying from falling down. How is people dying from falling down? Like, that's crazy, right? But it's because we don't know how the bone works. So because we don't know how the bone works, we are just relying on God to get us through, or nature, or whatever you believe provided you with source material, right? So it's, well, we have hormones, and then at this age, our hormones goes down, so our bones get weaker. And because our bones get weaker, sometimes we fall down and we can't get back up. Or sometimes we fall down and we break our hip. And because we broke our hip, it can never heal again. And so, yeah, we're dead. What? That's crazy. That means we do not have a good understanding of bone if we can't regenerate it. Because bone regenerates, right? Your liver regenerates, your bones regenerate. We can't regenerate bone. That's a problem. That is a medical problem. That is medical misinformation. That is a big gaping hole in the science of our medical understanding, right? So we went heavy into that space. We turned we built on top of Wolff's law, right? And we came up with Wu Sear's law. You know what I'm saying? So we spent a good amount. But anyway, so there's a whole other space where we got to get to the bottom of the electrical and luminous interaction between these tissues. That all starts with water, which is the reason why it's such an important part of the conversation. Your body's purest water comes from metabolizing carbohydrates and fats. So if you're having an obesity problem and you can't lose weight, or you're having a diabetic problem and you can't metabolize your sugar properly, that means your cells are dehydrated from the inside out because you do not have aquagenesis going on, right? So even if you drink 100 gallons of water in a day, you still have electric depression inside your cells, right? Because your cells depend more on the water produced from your mitochondria than they do on the water you get in from Fiji or alkaline water or whatever water, right? And you got a lot of these companies that are selling you their water based on saying how well that water gets into the cells,
Your body's not even designed to depend on water getting into the cells. Every single one of your cells has thousands, not even thousands. I'm bugging. I wonder what that number is. It's a hell of a number. It's a hell of a number. Because you have on average like 2,000 mitochondria in each cell. And each mitochondria has a different amount of cristae. And the cristae all have a different number of, electron transport chains or cytochrome complexes. So it's 2,000 times whatever number of cytochrome 4 those mitochondria hold. You know what I'm saying? So literally you have thousands, maybe even millions. For some cells, it's millions because some cells have millions of mitochondria, right? So you have anywhere from thousands into the hundreds of millions of different fountains. Literally, each mitochondria is its own fountain of pure water inside your cell, right? And that's what the electrical activity, microtubules, just all of the different electrical activity inside the cell depends on. Right? Okay. Y'all going to sleep. Okay. Y'all getting sleepy.
This is why you have to go to Amazon and get the book, Rich Abs, Poor Abs, now.